everybody. It is State Senator Mallory McMorrow. Welcome to another edition of This Week with Mallory. I am recording on a Thursday, but if you are tuning in, it is Friday. So happy Friday. And we will just go ahead and get right into it. So this week here in the Capitol, both the House and the Senate voted to advance a joint resolution that would put an issue to you, the voters, on the ballot this November. Here in Michigan, we have had pretty strict term limits on the legislature since 1992. So in 1992, the rules adopted by voters limit members in the state house to 3 two-year terms and members of the state senate to 2 four-year terms for a maximum of 14 years between the two chambers. And when I've talked to people on the doors, I think term limits overall are very popular and with good reason. I think especially as we look at the federal government, there's often criticism of we don't want career politicians. We want to make sure that there are fresh ideas coming in. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. However, what we've seen here in Michigan, particularly in the state house, is that right when people get elected, they're often asked, what are you running for next? And we have seen, when you start any job, it takes you a little while to get up and running, to figure out how to be most effective, to understand how the system works. And if you are so quickly termed out of your ability to serve in that chamber, what has happened here in Lansing is that the groups with the most control and influence over the state legislature are lobbyists, people who have been here for much longer, who have outlived most of the elected officials. And I don't think that that is the representation that we want. So the changes on the term limits end that will be on the ballot creates an ability for a person to serve 12 years total. So right now it's 14 years total, but there are restrictions in both the House and the Senate. So this would actually cut down the total time that an elected official could serve in the legislature, but give more flexibility on which chamber you serve in. So theoretically, somebody could serve all 12 years in the state House or all 12 years in the state Senate. So that would be a change that I think is for the better. But another important piece of this initiative that, again, we voted as a chamber to go to the ballot. So this doesn't automatically change how we run term limits in the state of Michigan. This is ultimately up for you to decide this November. What this initiative will also do is add financial disclosure to the state legislature. The proposal approved by the legislature would also require personal financial disclosures for lawmakers and statewide elected officials to identify conflicts of interest. Right now, Michigan is one of only 2 states, that does not require financial disclosures from lawmakers, and efforts to advance legislation putting such a requirement in place in the past have failed. This is huge. I have consistently supported efforts in the legislature to increase transparency here. If it ever comes to something that I would personally benefit from financially, I would recuse myself from the vote, but that is not required right now. And there's also no requirement in the legislature that legislators can't have other jobs or sources of income. When I ran for office for the first time in 2018, a promise that I made to voters was that I was going to close down my consultancy and do this job and only this job full time if I get elected. And I have done that. But I think this is really, really important to disclose, sources of income, investments, so that we are in line with 48 other states in the country at the bare minimum. So again, this will head to the ballot this November. This is up for you to decide. We will share links if you sign up for our e-news or tune in live so that you can understand more of what will be up on the ballot. But I supported this. I think that this is a solid step forward to both increasing transparency for our state legislature and also kind of getting out of the cycle of terming people out here before they've really gotten their feet wet. And ultimately, for those who would push back on this, I would say ultimately elections decide how long somebody is in office. If you do not feel adequately represented by your legislator, make sure you vote. Vote them in, vote them out. It is up to you to decide. So keep a lookout for that on your ballot this November. Other bills that moved this week in session, there was a package of bills led by Senator Jeff Irwin that would require schools to screen students for characteristics of dyslexia using a universal assessment. Schools would also need to provide tiered support to students showing dyslexic traits. Even since before taking office, I have spoken with a number of parents, particularly in Troy, who have organized to form groups around this issue, and also with administrators and teachers throughout our district who are on both sides of this issue. I've talked to administrators and teachers who say this is just another burden on teachers to do additional training, to take on these tools that have potentially minimal effects, versus what we know is the strongest indicator of students' ability to read and perform and succeed in school is a more holistic approach. It is making sure that they are safe and have adequate health care and have the support structure that they need and have access to mental health care. And those things are all fundamentally true. But what is also true is that we have a number of students right now who are falling through the cracks. And I wish, I could snap my fingers and make the rest of the holistic support structure much stronger for all of our students. I continually advocate for increased education funding, increased mental health access, increased access to healthcare, all of those sorts of things that I fundamentally believe in. But part of my job is also responding to the realities of the moment. And this package was worked on for a number of years with Senator Irwin. Senator Dana Polhanke is also a bill sponsor in this package. She is a veteran teacher herself. She taught for 19 years before running for office here in the Senate. And she said, she worked really, really hard to make sure we're not placing too many more burdens on both teachers and parents. The screening aspect of this legislation will be attached to existing testing requirements, so we're not adding more testing on top of students, which you've heard me say for years. The amount of testing that students do is really a detriment to the joy of learning and the desire to learn. So that has to be examined. But I feel good about this package. No legislation is perfect, but my hope is that even if there are a few students who can get support from having these tools, from having this training available in our classrooms, then I think that is a success. And long term, of course, we have to address the more holistic issues that impact families, teachers, kids, and ensuring that every student in the state of Michigan has everything they need to be successful. Additionally, this week, Senate Bills 993 through 995 created the Michigan Opioid Healing and Recovery Fund within the Department of Treasury, into which all settlement proceeds would be deposited. So this was non-controversial, but good to create a specific fund for opioid healing and recovery for those settlement dollars to come in and be distributed through the state. And that was it for session this week. Relatively light week. And it was light because we are still moving budget bills. So if you happen to watch session, you will have seen a number of budget bills come back from the House to the Senate. And we actually had this outreach from a constituent a while ago who, as budget bills were moving, if you watched this week, you would have seen I voted no on all of the budget bills. And if you're watching, why would you vote no on the school aid fund? Why would you vote no on, any of these budgets? And this is part of the procedural process. So many of these budget bills were either $0, they're placeholder, or they're budgets that still need to go to conference committee, which is when everybody gets together and keeps negotiating. So this is just a procedural move by effectively voting no on what is a budget bill in progress. It's not the final product. It keeps that process going. So if you happen to see the voting record and you're like, why did my state senator vote no on all of the budgets? That's why. This is not the final budget. Negotiations are ongoing. Budget bills are heading to conference committee, and we will continue working towards the final budgets that will come out of the state legislature and go back to the governor for her to sign or line item veto, and the process continues. With that, we're going to jump into our good news for the week. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. You may have seen some news about this, and look at this cute little bee. No Mow May. is something that has kind of taken hold in a number of cities, but Royal Oak decided this week, the city commissioners unanimously directed the city code enforcement officer this week to not issue violations for overgrown grass during all of May. This was a movement actually inspired by kids, by students, to support our pollinators, to support our bees. Mow May is a movement meant to help bees and other pollinators in their critical spring effort to thrive after the winter. So this is a really critical time during the year after winter as we head into spring for pollinators to come back into our world and to start doing all of the very, very necessary work that they need to do. So take the week off, everybody. Don't mow your lawn. You will not get a citation in the city of Royal Oak, so that we can support our bee population and look at these super cute signs in the process. Next up, out of Rochester, good news. Paint a Miracle has been teaching art to children and adults with disabilities and other challenges for 20 years. So 20-year anniversary, congratulations. This group has transformed people's lives in unimaginable ways. I was somebody who grew up, I loved art. I drew comics, I would paint, I went to college for art and design, and just, there is nothing like creative expression, and that should be available to everybody, and it really is enriching and wonderful to people. Paint a Miracle offered its first class to 4 people in 2002, and today nearly 500 artists take classes at the studio each year, serving as a place of independence, artistic freedom, and creative inspiration for many in the community. You can learn more about this wonderful organization at paintamiracle.org. Last up this week in our good news, the Troy High DECA team returns from Atlanta with awards. 27 members of the Troy High's DECA team returned from the International Career Development Conference in Atlanta last week with some serious glass and medals in hand. DECA stands for the Distributed Education Clubs of America. All in all, Troy High DECA had a fantastic competitive season for 2021-2022. Combined between the district, states, and ICDC, Troy High students brought home, wait for this number, 316 medals and 31 DECA Glass Awards this year. Just unbelievable. I don't even know how these students have time to do all of this. It's amazing. So congratulations to Troy High, to everybody, and that wraps up our good news for the week. So pretty quick episode this week. We did not have any questions in the submit your question form this week, but that is always available to you. If you are watching this after the fact, if you're checking in and you just have a burning question, feel free to drop a question in or use your question form. It is available to you anytime. We will bring that in and answer it in a future episode of This Week with Mallory. And with that, I hope you have a beautiful, safe weekend. The weather is warm. I hope you get outside, spend it with your families, and we will see you next time.